The biggest problem with Batman Forever is the most interesting parts of the movie, Bruce trying to get Dick Grayson off the path of revenge, Chase Meridian trying to help Bruce with his repressed memories where he revisits why he is Batman, and Two-Face's duality mirroring Bruce's duality. That stuff is great, but the movie doesn't give enough focus to any of it. But what if the movie could have focused on these more interesting aspects? I've already done videos on the 1989 Batman and Batman Returns, so my version of Batman Forever would be following the events I laid out in those videos. So let's talk about what my version of Batman Forever would have looked like. Point number 1. Bruce trying to get Dick off the path of revenge. The problem in the movie is that in 2 hours, it's a half hour before we even see Dick Grayson, and then another half hour before he finds out Bruce is Batman, leaving us with only a couple of quick scenes of Bruce talking to Dick about the shared pain that they feel. My suggestion is to put Robin's origin in between Batman Returns and Batman Forever. Have Bruce take him in, and either have Bruce reveal his secret identity to him, or he finds out on his own. All of that happens before the movie begins. That gives you much more room to explore this friendship. This also takes care of weird things like Commissioner Gordon bypassing child services and taking this 25-year-old man to live with a known philandering playboy, as well as Batman deciding to take someone who isn't trained in combat out into the field with him. Yeah, it's an emergency, but I think Batman would be too worried about everything that could go wrong for him to think that this is a good idea. Just because Robin is trained in acrobatics doesn't mean that he can throw a punch. And I don't have a problem with Chris O'Donnell's performance, but I think he's a little too old to be playing a teenager. Sure, you have full-grown adults playing teenagers in movies and TV shows all the time, but I think we can cast someone a little younger. But not too young, because then audiences won't like the whole child endangerment thing. Who would I cast? You're going to think that I'm joking, but I promise you I'm not. Hayden Christensen. This would absolutely not have happened in real life because he only had a few TV credits and a non-speaking role in the Mouth of Madness by this point. The only reason I thought of him is because of his turn as Anakin Skywalker in Attack of the Clones. That's not a movie I like or even tolerate, but he does a great job as a hate-filled teenager who seeks revenge for the death of his parents, which is what we would want to explore with Dick Grayson in this movie. Or I guess you could say this is Jason Todd. The angry sidekick thing would work better with him than it would with Dick anyway, but you might have people mad that you skipped over Dick. But they would probably get mad at Dick seeking revenge too, so it's a no-win scenario. Either way, Dick or Jason, we would be doing a movie version of the Batman the Animated Series episode Robin's Reckoning, which aired the year before this movie came out, so it might be cutting it pretty close depending on when the script was written. There was a version of the script written in 1993 and another in 1994, so in the time when the scripts were being revised, maybe someone saw Robin's Reckoning, even if I don't think that's very likely. Christensen would have only been 14 at the time this movie came out, which might still seem young to some people. So if you're going with the plot of Robin's Reckoning, you can have Robin leave the nest, so to speak, to seek his revenge, and he doesn't have Batman's blessing when he's doing this. And when he's not butting heads with Bruce, he is helping Bruce on the computer, studying evidence, stuff like what we saw Tim Drake doing in the comics in between his introduction and when he finally suited up as Robin. Point number 2, Chase Meridian trying to help Bruce with his repressed memories where he revisits why he is Batman. In the movie, Bruce first meets Chase because Riddler left him a riddle at his house, and he wanted her expert opinion on the person who left it. I would change the circumstances of how they meet. Our resident Robin is going through therapy after the death of his parents, and in an effort to help him, Bruce decides that he will also go through therapy sessions. A problem with the movie is that they were more interested in Nicole Kidman being a pretty face, which she is very good at, than being a psychiatrist, which I think is what we would want if we want to explore point number 2. If the deleted scenes I've heard about are true, Bruce was apparently supposed to find out that it was his fault that his parents died, thanks to him pestering them to go to the movies, which explains that line that stayed in the movie, where Alfred mistakenly thinks that Bruce is talking about Dick's parents when Bruce says, "I killed them." But then Chase was supposed to help Bruce with the idea that his parents apparently wanted to go to the movies anyway, so it isn't really his fault. While the death of his parents is what initially propelled him into this life, he willingly chooses to do this from this point forward, which ties into what he tells Riddler at the end, about how being Batman is a choice. It's also mirrored by another line in the movie when he tells Dick, "No, you're not joining me, you still have a choice." I'm a little fuzzy on how Bruce would think it's all his fault and then no it's not, but I like the end result there, so I would want to do something kinda like that throughout the movie. I would be ditching Chase as a romantic interest for Bruce though. If we're leaning all the way into Chase helping Bruce sift through his lost memories, it's a little gross for a psychiatrist to be in a sexual relationship with one of her patients. But I do want Chase to find out that Bruce is Batman. I would want her to find out on her own though, and not because Bruce tells her, just to show that she's a smart lady and she doesn't need the answer spoon-fed to her. Point number 3, Two-Face's duality and how it mirrors Bruce's duality. There's a few different things we can do to make this happen. The big one, I would completely take the Riddler out of the movie. Of the 3 things that I want to emphasize in this fix video, 2 of them concern Two-Face. While in the movie, he is little more than a thug working for Riddler. Remove Riddler and make Two-Face the main villain, and it becomes much easier to tie these things together. If you want to further tie them together, you can have a scene at the beginning of Chase going through a therapy session with Harvey before he escapes from Arkham. So if you still want the scene of Chase talking to Batman on the roof, it can be more than her trying to get in Batman's pants. She's actually concerned for her patient's well-being. And if you remove Riddler from the movie, Tommy Lee Jones would have been more likely to take the role seriously, since a big reason he was clowning it up in this movie was so that Jim Carrey wouldn't outshine him. But it's a moot point because I would want to keep Billy D. Williams if he would be down for it. Even though I've never seen him do anything this dark and serious, I think I'd trust him a little more than Tommy Lee Jones. I'd say that Harvey became Two-Face before the events of Batman Returns, which would explain why we never saw him in that movie. So why does Robin want revenge on Two-Face if he was presumably in Arkham during the events of Batman Returns? Instead of Harvey being directly responsible for the death of the Flying Graysons like he was in the movie, what if, as District Attorney, he made a tough call to help acquit a criminal, Tony Zuko, in exchange for information Zuko could give on a bigger fish that Harvey wanted to take down. Then that big fish managed to spray his face with acid like we briefly see in the movie, then in between Returns and Forever, Tony Zuko kills the Flying Graysons. If we're tracing the plot of Robin's Reckoning, instead of Batman knowing Tony Zuko is back in town and trying to keep Robin off the case, Batman is aware of the sequence of events that led to the creation of Two-Face, and Robin's investigations eventually lead to him figuring it out. If Harvey hadn't chosen to help get Zuko back on the streets, his parents might still be alive. I wouldn't even put Zuko himself in the movie. He either died shortly after Robin came to live with Bruce, or he's in prison. Robin hasn't suited up and gone out with Batman before, but when he finds out Two-Face's connection with Zuko, he steals some bat weaponry and puts on a cheap mask and goes to take his revenge. So Batman finally deciding to take a hand in training Robin will be more for his own safety than irresponsibly throwing him in the line of fire. But even when Bruce tries to help Robin channel his rage, Robin makes it clear he is still going to go after Two-Face. Instead of the angry confrontational conversation that he has with him after Dick finds out who he is in the movie, we will get more of an emotionally broken conversation. Bruce talks about how angry he was shortly after he came back to Gotham from his years abroad. He wasn't looking to save people, he was looking for revenge, a lot like Robin is now. And Alfred helped him to realize this isn't what his parents would have wanted him to do with his life. Robin cries, he hugs Bruce, he's come around, he says he doesn't want revenge, but Two-Face is still dangerous. And Two-Face doesn't have some big evil supervillain scheme at play here. He and whatever crew he's put together, they've been hitting up banks, armored cars, and the like to pay for an underground surgery to reconstruct his face. When Harvey was at Arkham, Bruce brought in the best doctors that money could buy, and they all said that maybe they could fix his face, but his psyche would still be shattered, so it would do no good. But Harvey is impatient, so he broke out and wants his face fixed now. Some audiences might be disappointed that this isn't a bad guy who wants to take over the world or blow up the city, but I would be fine with the lesser schemes than your average end-of-the-world threat, but stronger emotionally resonant themes that tie into the hero. And if you want to bring in Gilda/Grace Dent, maybe Harvey is putting aside money to keep her living comfortably, even though she's scared of the man that he's become. Robin recognizes that Harvey still poses a danger to everyone in the city, and if his surgery doesn't go the way he wants it to, things could get much worse. So he asks Bruce to continue training him not to become a weapon of revenge, but to do what Bruce has done with his life and stop what happened to the Flying Graysons from happening to other parents. Bruce is still hesitant to bring Robin out into the field, even with the training he's gotten, because he's still young. And while Bruce won't say this out loud, he's not sure if Robin has entirely given up on his rage. But he does agree that Two-Face is dangerous and agrees to a probationary field patrol where Robin will be limited to rooftops, helping with reconnaissance and long-range non-lethal weapons if Batman has to get into a fight with someone. Eventually, Robin will somehow get kidnapped, and Batman has to bring in Gilda/Grace to help talk Harvey down. It works, Harvey goes back to Arkham, Chase promises to keep Batman's secret a secret, and Batman and Robin decide to continue their partnership. I know this isn't a super detailed plot synopsis like I do in many of my fix videos, but all of the pieces are there. Young Robin is filled with vengeance, Two-Face escapes from Arkham, Batman tries to bring him in without anyone getting hurt or hurting Two-Face. Bruce is working through his trauma with Chase, who is also helping young Robin. We can still keep Alfred encouraging Robin to follow in Bruce's footsteps, and Bruce resisting that. But in the movie, it feels more like Bruce is just being a butthead. But here, I would really want Bruce to be concerned for Robin's safety, both physically and mentally. At first, he can think that what he does isn't very good for himself psychologically, and by the end, with Chase's help, he realizes that what he does has had a positive outlet for himself and his feelings, and it could be beneficial for Robin to do the same thing. And that's everything that I would want to change about Batman Forever. I hope you guys liked this one, and if you did, be sure to check out some of my other videos while you wait for my next video where I offer my fixes on a movie that could have been better. Until then, see you later.